again, that's so simple and demonstrate to the American people that in a bipartisan way, we have the ability to begin looking at these programs that are so important to people across our country in a way that doesn't take us down the fiscal tube. Mr. President, I thank you for listening. I know it's tough when there's not much happening down here. I notice the absence of a quorum, and I yield the floor.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander.
Mr. President, are we in a quorum call?
Yes.
I ask to vacate the quorum call.
Without objection, Senator from Alaska is recognized.
Mr. President, I rise today to recognize a great civil rights leader in Alaska and to join all Alaskans in celebrating Elizabeth Peratrovich Day. Almost 25 years ago, the Alaska State Legislature designated today as Elizabeth Peratrovich Day to commemorate the signing of the Alaska Anti-Discrimination Act of 1945 and to honor Ms. Peratrovich. Elizabeth Peratrovich is a Tlingit Alaska native who fought for equal rights for all Alaskans long before her now famous address to the Alaska Legislature. She was Grand President of the Alaska Native Sisterhood and fought against the very public discrimination taking place against the First People of Alaska. In many places in southeast Alaska just 60 years ago, public signs read, "No dogs, no natives or Filipinos." Others simply said, "No natives allowed." There were separate drinking fountains and separate doors in public buildings as Tlingits and the Peratrovich the Peratoviches could only purchase property in native neighborhoods, could only be seated in segregated portions of a theater, and could only send their children to missionary schools, not the public schools for which they paid a school tax. In the face of this discrimination, Ms. Peratrovich demonstrated courage in her convictions, courage which changed the course of civil rights treatment for Alaska Natives. In 1941, Elizabeth and her husband, Roy, wrote a joint letter to the Territorial Governor, Ernest Greening, about their concerns. In part, they wrote, quote, "My attention has been called to a business establishment which has a sign on the door which reads, 'No natives allowed.' In view of the present emergency when unity is being stressed, don't you think that it's very un-American? We have always contended that we are entitled to every benefit that is accorded our so-called white brothers. We pay the required taxes in some instances that we feel are unjust, such as the school tax. Our native people pay the school tax each year to educate white children, yet they try to exclude our children from these schools." Close quote. Although anti-discrimination legislation had been floating around the territorial legislature for years, it had not gained any traction. And again, I want you to put your mind in this time. This was 1940s. Many legislators believed Alaskan Natives were second-class citizens. This despite the fact they paid taxes, bear arms in defense of this nation. They were not endowed with the same rights as others. In 1945, however, hope emerged. Anti-discrimination legislation had passed the Alaska State House, but was stalled in the state Senate. One senator made a speech stating that natives had only recently emerged from savagery and were not fit for society. He argued they had not had the experience of 5,000 years of civilization. With great courage and composure and poise, Elizabeth Peratrovich confronted the senator who had just belittled her and her people. Not only was she a native addressing the mostly white Alaska audience, she was also the first woman ever to address the Alaska State Senate. In a quiet, steady, but bold voice, Elizabeth Peratrovich opened her testimony with the following words: "I would not have expected that I, who am barely out of savagery, would have to remind the gentleman with 5,000 years of recorded civilization behind them of our Bill of Rights." She then recounted her personal experience with discrimination, how she and her husband had not been allowed to lease a house in a white neighborhood, how she was prohibited from enrolling her children in the same schools as everyone else, the schools she paid a school tax for. And she talked about the embarrassment of her children felt when they were not allowed to sit with their friends in the theater. Following Elizabeth Peratovich's speech, the Senate exploded in applause. Her plea had been effective. The opposition that had been so absolute shrank to a mere whisper. On February 8, 1945, and again, I underline the date thinking of our national history. On February 8, 1945, a bill to end discrimination in Alaska passed the Senate by a vote of 11-5. Elizabeth Bradovich had been instrumental in making Alaska the first organized government under the U.S. flag to condemn discrimination. Today in Alaska, we celebrate Elizabeth Bradovich Day and affirm our beliefs in equality. With each passing year, we move closer to truly realizing the quote, that all men are created equal and that all are endowed with certain inalienable rights. Thank you for allowing me to embrace the memory of one brave woman who fought for those fundamental principles, Alaskan Elizabeth Bradovich. Madam Chair, I see an absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Madam President.
The senator from New Mexico.
Madam President, I'd ask that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, first I'd ask unanimous consent that Aoife DeLargy, who is an intern in my office, be granted floor privileges during the pendency of S. 1813.
Without objection.
Madam President, I come to the floor along with my colleague, Senator Udall, to honor Ben Lujan, who is the longtime Speaker of the New Mexico House of Representatives. After tirelessly representing District 46 in our state legislature for 37 years, the last 12 years of that 37 years as Speaker of the House, Ben is retiring. He's doing so to pursue his fight against lung cancer. I'm certain he will bring the same strength and tenacity and courage to that battle that he's brought to every other endeavor that he has taken on throughout his life. Throughout his long career, he's fought fiercely to ensure that the needs of his fellow New Mexicans were being addressed. He's worked hard to improve the quality of New Mexico's school system. He's fought for the rights of our workers, and he's worked hard at the strengthening of our economy. I know I speak for all of his colleagues in our state legislature when I say that his service and strength throughout his recent personal difficulties have been an inspiration to all, and his fighting spirit will be missed once he leaves our legislature. His exemplary work ethic is something which we should all aspire to. He was born into a family of 9 children, the son of a sheep herder in the small town of Nambe in northern New Mexico. In 1957, he began work as an iron worker at Los Alamos National Laboratory. From these experiences, he learned the importance of always striving to do better, to do more, not only for his family, but for his community and for his beloved state. In 1970, he began his extraordinary public service when he was elected to Santa Fe's County Commission. He aspired to have a wider impact, and he ran for the New Mexico House of Representatives in 1975. After nearly a quarter of a century in the House, he was elected by his colleagues as the Speaker of the House in 2001. His devotion is a characteristic which is reflected in all aspects of his life, public and private. He and his wife Carmen have been married for 52 years. His children, Shirley, Jackie, Jerome, and Ben Ray, are a testament to the values with which they were raised. In fact, we're fortunate to have his son, Ben Ray, as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives representing the 3rd District of New Mexico. Tom and I have the good fortune to serve with Ben Ray in the New Mexico delegation, and he represents our state extremely well. All of us whose lives have been enriched by Ben Lujan's work in bettering our state owe him a debt of gratitude for his service. His illness has not hindered his dedication and hard work for our state as he has continued running the House of Representatives in our state throughout the current session of our legislature, which is expected to end today. Madam President, I join with all New Mexicans and with my colleague Senator Udall in extending my gratitude to the Speaker for his extraordinary work for the people of New Mexico. We're indeed fortunate to have had a man of his character serving our state in such an exemplary way and in such an important position for so many years. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
The senator from New Mexico.
Thank you, Madam President. And I also rise today to join New Mexico's senior senator who has served New Mexico so well. It's just a real honor to join Senator Bingaman here in paying tribute to one of our great New Mexico citizens, Speaker Ben Lujan. Ben, as Senator Bingaman said, is retiring this month. He's an esteemed colleague of ours, and he's also our friend, a good friend at that. Indeed, Ben Lujan is a friend to all New Mexicans. Ben recently said, and I quote him, "Let us make our time on earth worthwhile and do what's right, make a difference for the children, our working families, and our elderly," end quote. He has lived up to that challenge throughout his career, fighting for education, for workers, for middle-class families, for Native Americans, for health care, and for jobs. In a world that grows ever more cynical, Ben Lujan has always been the real deal. Ben was born in 1935 in the small community of Nambe, New Mexico, one of 9 children. His family, like so many, struggled through the Great Depression. He used to relate tales of his father as a sheep herder, herding sheep from the Valle Grande to Chama, New Mexico. Ben still lives on the property that has been in his family for 3 generations. Ben is that rare combination, humble but tenacious in what he believes in. He has never forgotten where he came from, and he has always been a champion for the less fortunate among us. Even in his youth, Ben showed a remarkable talent for teamwork, for playing by the rules, for just plain hard work, and for determination. He loves basketball. In high school, he was the captain of his varsity basketball squad, and the gymnasium where the Pewaukee Elks play today is named in his honor. Ben Lujan has been leading teams ever since. He attended the College of Santa Fe but had to disenroll for lack of money. For the next several years, he sought work wherever he could find it, in California, in New Mexico, wherever he had to go to get a job. He understands hard times. He knows what it's like to just try and make ends meet. And in all his years in public service, a sense of justice and fair play has always been at his core. Ben worked as an ironman in Los Alamos. He joined the International Association of Bridge, Structural, and Ornamental Ironworkers. In 1959, Ben married his high school sweetheart, the love of his life, Carmen, his devoted partner now for over half a century, and they began a family that would grow to include 4 children, Shirley, Jackie, Jerome, and Congressman Ben Ray Lujan. As Jeff said, we're fortunate to have him, Ben Ray, serving in our delegation, and we work with him on many, many occasions every day. Ben began his extraordinary career in public service when he was elected to the Santa Fe County Commission in 1970. 4 years later, he was elected to the New Mexico House of Representatives. After a quarter of a century of service in that body, he was elected Speaker of the House of Representatives. He has always called attention to the needs of others and not to himself. Ben is an inspiration, not just to those who aspire to a life of public service, but also to a life of personal integrity. His word is his bond to his family, to the people of New Mexico. His principles have illuminated his life and brightened the lives of all who know him. I count myself among that number. I'm proud to call Ben Lujan my friend. I was present at the opening of the New Mexico State Legislature last month when Ben informed us of his illness, an illness that left him weakened but not defeated. Like everyone in that room, I was deeply saddened at the news of Ben's illness. But that sorrow is tempered by admiration. Admiration for Ben, for Carmen, for the entire Lujan family, and for the incredible strength they have shown. He would not allow a terrible illness to distract from his duties as Speaker of the House. He remained steadfast in his services to the people of New Mexico. And even while undergoing chemotherapy, he continued to work as Speaker. Even a devastating illness could not deter Ben Lujan from the job he had committed to do, and his family supported him every step of the way. That is honor, that is integrity, that is courage. None of us will ever forget Ben's brave words the day last month. He said, quote, "While this has taken a toll on me physically, it has not broken my spirit, my will, my faith, and my commitment to New Mexico," end quote. And so to Ben, I want to say thank you Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your friendship. As we celebrate this great son of New Mexico, I will close with these lines from the poet Lord Alfred Tennyson. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in the old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. That, my friends, is Ben Lujan, to serve, to strive, and not to yield. Thank you, Madam President. And it's a real honor to be here on the floor with Senator Bingaman and talk about our good friend Ben Lujan. I yield the floor.
I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
The pending business in the Senate is the Surface Transportation Bill. Off the floor, senators continue negotiations on amendments to the bill. Congressional Quarterly writes that a bipartisan compromise on legislation to extend the payroll tax cut appeared to be on track this afternoon, with House and Senate votes predicted on Friday. It remains unclear, however, if Senate Republicans are on board with the final compromise. House Speaker John Boehner told reporters earlier today that there's no basis for Senate Republicans to complain that they were left out of negotiations. Quote, they've been involved in the process as anyone else. Meanwhile, Senate Democratic leaders are holding a news conference at 4:15 Eastern about where things stand with extending the payroll tax cut. We'll bring you any news from that briefing. As we wait for a senator to speak, an update on some of our primetime programming here on C-SPAN 2. The Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, and Army Lieutenant General Ronald Burgess, who is the Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee today, saying that the al-Qaeda of Iraq was likely behind a series of bombings against the Syrian regime in recent months. You can see their testimony at 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on C-SPAN 2.